Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another deck profile. Today is going to be a Dragon World deck focused around the new G-Boost Will mechanic. What G-Boost Will does is, at the beginning of the attack phase, you draw a card. For this turn, all cards on your field get plus 5,000 power. Then, if another Dragon Deity tribe is on your field, for this turn, at the end of the battle of a card on your field, you gain 1 life and deal 1 damage to your opponent. He's really good because he can chip away at your opponent even if your attacks don't connect. So that's just really strong. He's kind of like a weird aggro burn, but the burn is just complementary to the aggro and isn't necessarily the whole focus of the deck. It's just the added benefit. The deck is centered around G-Boost Will, so as such, we're going to be running 4 of the Buddy. Next, I run 4 copies of Dio Gardra. So when this card enters the field, you can drop a hand card. If you do, put the top card of your deck into your gauge and put 1 card with G-Boost Will from your deck to your hand and shuffle your deck. Just that first ability alone allows you to gain a gauge and tutor out Gargantua/Wyvern. So that's already really strong, and then it has the added benefit of when you gain life, if you have a card with G-Boost on your field, drop up to 2 of your opponent's gauge, and you can only activate this ability once per turn. Not only does he search out Gargantua Wyvern, he also has the ability to eat away at your opponent's gauge. And because G-Boost Will is kind of like a sub-life gain kind of deck, where you just have a lot of ways of gaining life, it's not very hard to trigger his ability. Next, I run 4 copies of Garcat. So Garcat's been basically a charge and draw staple since his release, and it is no different here. All he does is when he enters the field, if you have another Dragon Deity tribe card on your field, you charge and draw. So he's just a really solid card. Next, I run 3 copies of Smily Street Entertainer Yuga. So its call cost is pay 1 gauge and put the top card of your deck into its soul. It has a counteract ability, Have Fun. During your turn, call up to 1 adventurer or Dragon Deity tribe monster from your hand without paying its call cost. And then you can only use it once per turn. Ideally, you're going to want to call Gargantua/Wyvern for free on top of him because of his secondary effect. When an adventurer or Dragon Deity tribe monster with this card in its soul attacks, you gain 1 life and deal 1 damage. Not only does Gargantua/Wyvern have that same ability off of his G-Boost Will mechanic, it's getting an added benefit with Entertainer Yuga. Next, I run 2 copies of Garprocellariidae. What this card does is counteract. During your turn, choose up to 1 Dragod on your field. You may put this card from your field into the chosen card's soul. If you do, stand the chosen card. Then, if this card is in the soul of a monster with G-Boost, it gets Penetrate and Counterattack. Not only is it a size 0, which is very important because ideally you're going to want to have a size 1 on your left or right, Gargantua/Wyvern on your other left or right, and then this card in the center. So that way it attacks first, and then it goes into the soul of Gargantua/Wyvern. And then when it's in the soul, it'll give Gargantua/Wyvern Penetrate and Counterattack, which is very good. So that way it clears your center, so that way you can attack with your item as well. Next, I run 2 copies of Awakened Deity Dragon Ruhe Gardra. If a card with G-Boost Will is on your field, Dragon Deity Tribe cards on your field can't be rested by your opponent's card effects. That just top part alone is very important because resting is such a huge part of like the big meta game right now, where the only way to interact with the opponent's cards in a lot of scenarios, because of how much protection everything has, is by resting. Being able to prevent your stuff from being rested is just a very strong effect. And then on top of that, it has the added benefit of when you gain life, if a card with G-Boost is on your field for this turn, this card gets +2 critical and double attack. Not only does he get +2 crit and double attack when you gain life, which isn't hard because G-Boost Will procs the life trigger, he himself just gets even stronger. Next, I run 2 copies of Awakened Deity Dragon Sturm Gardragon. Its call cost is put a card from your drop zone into its soul and pay a gauge. If you have a Dragod on your field, this card's size gets reduced by 1. Whenever you gain life, if a card with G-Boost is on your field, return up to 2 cards from your opponent's field to the hand and draw a card. Use this ability only once per turn. Then he's got triple attack and soul guard. That's really strong because sometimes the opponent doesn't have all the forms of protection and you could bounce their item or set spell, and during combat, especially when they can't replay those things, it can be very important. And then the triple attack doesn't hurt because it'll proc all of the times with /Wyvern's G-Boost Will, giving it basically the drain effect. Next, I run 2 copies of Awakened Deity Dragon Tith Gardra. When this card enters, put the top card of your deck into your gauge. Then, if a card with G-Boost is on your field, put the top 2 cards of your deck into your gauge. So just that first part alone is when he enters the field, charge 1 if you have nothing else but him, and it's charge 3 if you have Gargantua /Wyvern out. And then, during each player's attack phase, so yours and your opponent's, whenever you gain life, draw a card and deal 1 damage to your opponent. And then you can only use it once per turn. It's pretty good because it's just additional burn and it's an additional draw. That's it for the monsters. Onto the spells. I run 3 copies of Gar-Oracle. You can only cast this card if you have a Dragon Deity Tribe monster on your field. Its call cost is pay a gauge, then draw 2. If you have a Dragod on your field, you gain 2 life. You can only use it once per turn. So this is really good because it's drawing us 2 cards and it's gaining us a life, which procs some of our life gain triggers. Next, I run 3 copies of G-Boost Over. You can only cast this card if a card with G-Boost is on your field. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck and put 2 into your hand and put the rest into the gauge. And then you can only activate it once per turn. So this is just really good at fishing through your deck to try to find more useful things. And the fact that it just doesn't even have a call cost makes it even better. Next, I run 3 copies of Gar-E-Grants. You can only cast this card if you have G-Boost Will on your field. And then counter, look at the top 4, put 2 into your hand, put the rest into your gauge, and then call a Dragon Deity Tribe monster. Next, I run 4 copies of Gar-E-Shilt. You can only cast this during an attack on your opponent's turn if a Dragon Deity Tribe monster is on your field. Nullify the attack. Then, if a card with G-Boost is on your field, you gain 2 life and deal 2 damage. Next, I run 3 copies of Blade Breaking Shockwave. Pay 2 life. Counter. Choose up to 2 cards on your opponent's field and rest them. Then, if you have a card with G-Boost on your field, the chosen cards can't be stand. Resting 2 of your opponent's stuff and then making sure it doesn't stand is very important. And then, it's only paying 2 life, which in this deck we have so many ways of gaining life that it just doesn't necessarily matter paying 2 life. Next, I run 1 copy of Dragod Glyph. It's a set spell. All Dragon Deity Tribe cards on your field can't be returned to hand by your opponent's card effects. Then, when you gain life by a card effect, if a card with G-Boost is on your field, put the top card of your deck into your gauge and draw a card. You can only have 1 Dragod Glyph set on your field. This just makes it so they can't bounce your stuff, and whenever you gain life from an effect, you just charge and draw. Next, I run 2 copies of Dragod's Shine. Its cast cost is paying a life. Choose one of the following 2. You can only use it once per turn. You could either put 1 Dragon Deity Tribe item from your deck to your hand and shuffle your deck, which helps fish out the item, pretty solid. Or you can put 2 Dragon Deity Tribe monsters with different names from your drop zone to your hand. Next, I run 2 copies of Gar-C'mon. Counter, put the top card of your deck into your gauge, then call up to 1 size 1 or less Dragon Deity Tribe monster from your drop zone by paying its call cost. Next, I run 2 copies of Combat Deity Arises. You can only cast this card during your final phase and if you have a Dragod on your field. Pay 2 gauge, counter. Stand all Dragon Deity Tribes monsters on your field, then all cards on your field can attack during this phase. This is basically like our fake impact, where you cast it during final phase and just get another attack phase. Lastly, for the items, I run 4 copies of Deity Dragon Lightwing Blade. Its equip cost is paying a gauge and paying a life. If a Dragod monster is on your field, Dragon Deity Tribe monsters on your field can't be destroyed or have their effects be nullified. This is what's really bringing the whole deck together, because it's adding that layer of protection that the deck really needs. And then on top of that, it has a counteract ability. During each player's attack phase, if a card with G-Boost Will is on your field, call up to one size 1 or less Dragon Deity Tribe monster from your drop zone by paying its call cost, and then you can only use it once per turn. And then it has Penetrate. This kind of acts like another Gar-C'mon, but it's built into the weapon. So not only does it give your monsters the added layer of protection by not having their abilities be nullified and can't be destroyed, it also helps recur some of your size 1s. So you could kind of like swap out your size 1s on the fly and just keep up the pressure, keep up the aggression, and keep chipping away at your opponent's life and keep gaining life at the same time. It just helps with all of that, on top of which it's a Dragon Deity Tribe card. It also can proc off of a lot of the other different cards. That's it for the main deck. I do have a bit of a work in progress side deck for it. In the side, I run 1 copy of Dragotrap, pay a gauge, pay 2 life, counter, choose a card on your opponent's field. For that turn, it can't attack. So it's just another solid defense spell. If you want something not to attack, this is just the best way to do it. It's a little bit better than resting, but I prefer to run this in the sideboard because I already have so many defensive options that this is just an additional one. Next, I run 3 copies of Loyalty. So Loyalty is just a staple in like almost every deck at this point. Most of the time, again, you're just going to use it for its last effect of, for this turn, your opponent can't call more than 3 monsters. So at their 3rd call, you just pop down Loyalty and then just shut off them from calling anything else for the rest of the turn. Next, I run 2 copies of Buddy Block. So Buddy Block is just, again, another super solid defense spell. Most of the time, you're going to use it for its last ability. If your opponent attacked 4 or more times during this turn, you just don't take damage from attacks. This is mostly a last-ditch effort kind of card where if your field is cleared and they've already attacked and done a whole bunch of stuff and are trying to continue to attack and do more stuff, this just helps shut that down during the attack phase so that way you can live. And because your life total is going to be high, you can generally protect yourself relatively well between your life total and all your different defense spells, but I find it situational to run. Next, I run 2 copies of Recovery Veil. Recovery Veil is just another one of those staples where you're mostly going to be using it for the anti-discard cards. That's its primary function. Its other function, most of the time, you're just going to use it to just charge 2 gauge, but it's just there for the anti-hand. Then lastly, I run 2 copies of Around the World Athora SD. When this card enters the field, choose a monster on your opponent's field. You may pay 1 gauge and discard a card from your hand. If you do, return all souls from the chosen card to their hand. Then when this card attacks, you gain 1 life. It's just really good at attacking the soul because the deck doesn't really have a way outside of just its natural aggression to attack souls. This just helps us attack like big soul decks. And then on top of that, when it attacks, it gains us a life, which procs a lot of our life gain triggers. I do have some other cards you could possibly run. You could run Lost World because you're drawing and gaining so much gauge. Lost World just is a natural fit. You could also run Buddy Option. You'd use it mostly to put this into the soul of Gargantua/Wyvern to make it so it's even harder to get rid of your /Wyvern. Then, if you really want to, you could try to run Awakened Deity Dragon Garcat. You can't necessarily boost up its power, but the fact that it has natural double attack, and if its power somehow manages to increase over 10,000, it's just a really solid effect. You could also run Awakened Deity Dragon Dio Gardra. This is a pretty good card because when it attacks, you may put a Dragon Deity Tribe monster from your drop zone in the soul of a Dragon Deity Tribe monster on your field. So most of the time, you're just going to want to try to pump the soul of /Wyvern, and then if you do, you gain 1 life and draw a card. Again, gaining a life, triggering all of our on-life gain triggers. If a card with G-Boost is on your field, for this turn, this card gets double attack. So not only is it pumping the soul of /Wyvern, it's also gaining a life, drawing a card, and having double attack to gain more life and deal burn damage on top of its double attack. You could also run Evolution Thunder Garblitz Dragon. If a Dragod is on your field, its size is reduced by 2. If your life is 10 or greater, this card gets +2 crit, which is pretty good, and it's pretty easy to maintain a high life total. When you gain life, if a card with G-Boost is on your field, this card gets quadruple attack. And then it has Move, Penetrate, and Soul Guard. He's just really good at having multiple attacks, and he triggers on gaining life. You could also run Evolution Storm, Reshoot Dragon. If you have a Dragod on your field, its size is reduced by 2. When this card stands by a card effect, draw a card and deal 1 damage to your opponent. Again, kind of playing into that whole burn thing, and we have ways to stand it up with our fake impact in a way. And then if a card with G-Boost is on your field, if this card attack can't be nullified if it's attacking alone, and it has Penetrate. You could also run Revenge. Pay a gauge, call a size 2 or less Dragod from your drop zone without paying its call cost. You can only activate once per turn. If Wyvern is in your drop zone, this is a good way to get it out of your drop zone, and it's at counter speed, so you could potentially call it during the combat step. Next, you could also run Garland's Shield. You can only cast this during attack on your opponent's turn. Call cost is paying a life, not that big of a deal. You basically nullify the attack and put 1 card from your drop zone into the soul of a Dragon Deity tribe monster on your field. You could also run Combat Deity Roar. You can only cast this if you have a Dragon Deity tribe on your field. Counter, nullify the attack. Then, if you have a card with G-Boost on your field, the chosen card that attacked just can't stand. If you want, you could run Deity Gargantua Crusher. You can only cast this if your opponent has 5 or life less, and and either player doesn't have a monster on your center, and you have a card with G-Boost. You pay 1 gauge, deal 5 damage. You could also run Gargantua Buster Break. You can only cast this if you have a Dragod on your field. Pay 3 gauge, which is pretty expensive, but the benefits can sometimes outweigh the cost, in which you gain 3 life, you draw 3 cards, then destroy 3 cards on your opponent's field and deal 3 damage to the opponent. It's just a pretty good impact at just doing a lot. You could also run Gar Knights Trash. You can only cast this card if you have a G-Boost card on your field. Pay 1 gauge, destroy all cards on your opponent's field, draw and deal 1 damage to your opponent for each card destroyed. It's kind of acting like Gargantua Buster Break, but it's in a spell. You could also play Gar-E-C'mon. You can only cast this card if you've attacked 3 or more times. Put the top 2 cards of your deck into your gauge. Then, if you have a card with G-Boost on your field, call up to 1 size 1 or less Dragon Deity tribe monster from your deck by paying its call cost. And if you do, draw a card. This is just a pretty good card overall because it searches through your deck for any size 1 or less Dragon Deity tribe. It charges you 2 gauge, so that way you could play whatever size 1's cost gauge, and then on top of that, you draw a card at the end. You could also run Gar-E-Dasher. You can only cast this card if you have a card with G-Boost Will on your field. You pay 1 gauge, counter, choose one of the following 2. You could either nullify all abilities of a monster on your opponent's field and destroy it, which can be pretty important, or you gain 5 life, which also can be pretty good. You could run Gar-Harlan. Cast cost, put a Dragon Deity tribe monster from your field to the drop zone. Counter, choose one of the following 2, either charge 4 or gain 4. Just, again, pretty good utility card. And then, if you're running Lost World, you could just run Dragonic Exchange. Just charge a gauge and look at your gauge and swap a card from your gauge with one from your hand. That's it for Gargantua / Wyvern G-Boost Will. It's a pretty interesting deck considering how much just aggression it has on its own, and then the added benefit of burning and gaining life all at the same time. And if the opponent doesn't have a way to stop it, it can just steamroll your opponent. I hope you enjoyed this deck profile. I hope you like and subscribe, and I'll have the deck list in the description below, and I will see you in the next video.